Hey, I'm Ari. I'm a VTuber who is stuck in a video game and my gender switches at random, and I'm going to show you how I did this magical girl transformation. All right, so the first thing you're going to need is you're going to need your models that you want to transform. I have a female and a male version. You're going to need a program called Warudo, which you can find on Steam right here. Warudo. It is a 3D VTubing software that lets you do a lot of cool stuff with your model. And that's basically it. I'll go ahead and show you the node setup, but one thing to keep in mind is essentially what this is doing is it is switching out one model for the other. So you'll see that currently I'm on my female model and it's enabled. The male model is currently disabled, and that's essentially all it's doing is it's turning off one and enabling the other with like a pretty animation on the camera and then some particle effects. So let's go ahead and talk about the blueprints. So this is the blueprint right here. If you're not familiar with Warudo blueprints, there's plenty of tutorials out there that can go more into depth, but for the purpose of this, I'll just explain the blueprint. And yeah, I would recommend maybe checking out some more basic stuff, but this is essentially what it's doing, right? So I'm triggering it with a keystroke. So I have the transformation when I press Control, Shift, and 1. That's what actually triggers the transformation. So what it's doing is on that keystroke press, it is playing music from a music player. You have to have this added in your assets right here. So you have to have a music player, and I have the sound effect loaded up in the files. And I think that's really all you need. Just add that. And yeah, and then you can add this node, which lets you play the source. I have it checked to play from beginning. And after that, when it's played, I have this set asset property, which what it's doing is it is going to my camera and it's turning up the bloom. That's essentially the heart of this transformation, is just over time, it's turning up the bloom intensity, and also it's turning up the blur as well. So if you notice, I'll go ahead and do it again. Turns the bloom all the way up, and also I blurs the outlines just a little bit, just to make it a little bit smoother. You can adjust that if you want to make it more or less blurred. But yeah, that's essentially what it's doing. Is it's 2 tracks, and they're doing the same thing. One is doing bloom, one is doing blur. So yeah, it's I have a target value, I have a transition time, and then in between, it's turning up the bloom and turning down the bloom. In between that, I have it setting my female model. It's toggling whether it is enabled. So you have to select the character asset, the data path that you want to affect. I'm just toggling whether it's enabled or not, and set this to a toggle. And then on the exit of that, it is turning the bloom back down to 0 of the target value and 3 transition time. I set the easing to be in out. Actually, this is supposed to be in out cubic. I just think it makes it a little smoother and kind of gives me the effect that I'm going for. This is for another blueprint. I don't actually need that. Put that over there. I do a lot of testing in here. So yeah, and then the other branch. So at the same time, when I do that keystroke, it is taking the camera. It is turning the blur intensity to this target value. I can actually turn it up higher if you want, just to show you what it looks like. We'll do a target value of 4, and I'll do the transformation. So it gives me a really blurry outline. Yeah, that's kind of cool. I kind of like it a little bit lower. Maybe we'll go for something like that too. And it just kind of blurs the outline a bit, just to kind of make it a little smoother. But yeah, so this is doing the opposite of this one right here. This is toggling the female model. This one down here is toggling the male model. One thing to note is that you have to have both models loaded in, and you have to have, to start, you have to have one enabled and you have to have one disabled, because if they're both enabled, it's not going to work. If they're both disabled, it's not going to work. You have to have one off and one on. Another thing to keep note of is in your camera settings, you want to make sure it's orbiting your character. Sometimes it does some weird stuff if you have it on these other options. Another thing to keep in mind is you want to make sure the things that we're changing are bloom, and we're also changing blur. You want to make sure that these are at least enabled. If they're not enabled, then adjusting the values with the blueprint won't actually do anything. So they need to be enabled, set to 0 to start. And you can like play with this to figure out what you want your target value to be. So like if you want, you know, about that blur, a 2, then you know that 2 is where you want to eventually end up with your transition. So you can play with that, but make sure they're enabled. Same thing for bloom. That's what I'm doing is I'm turning up the intensity to 10. And I honestly don't even need to go all the way up to 10. We could go up to like 3.5 is it gives me a fully white silhouette. So I might actually adjust that, to be honest. Maybe we'll go with like 4. But yeah, make sure your threshold is where you want it to be. You can kind of play with it to get the effect that you want. I just want a completely white silhouette. So yeah, we'll go back to the blueprint. So yeah, let's see. Let me actually clean this up a little bit. I'm gonna line up the timings to actually show you what's going on better. So now I've lined it up so that what's happening simultaneously is lined up perfectly. So when this keystroke is pressed, one of these, the top one plays music, and then what's happening is at the same time, the asset properties of camera 1, the bloom is being turned up to this target value, which like I said, probably 4 is good enough, over 3 seconds. And then also the blur is being turned up to this target value. After that transition ends, so I'm using the on transition end right here. It is setting the asset property. So I have one that is controlling the female model, one that's controlling the male, and it is a toggle. So that's happening at the same time. So the swap is instant and it's happening simultaneously. And then on the end of that, this set asset property node is doing the same thing that these are doing, but in reverse. So it's taking the bloom intensity and it's turning it back down to 0. And it's taking the blur intensity, turning it back down to 0. And then on the end, I've got a little short delay. And then I've got a particle spawn, which is just the magic confetti, just to give a little thing at the end. And the sound effect that I found is just a free sound effect I found online that I thought was good enough. So yeah, I'll go ahead and show it one more time. Boop. And see, that's the sound effect there at the end. So yeah, super easy. And you can do this on your own. You know, feel free to take this and you know, mess with it, make it your own. And yeah, here, I'll show it one more time. I guess zoomed in, this is how you would be, I guess, in like a just chatting scene, but this is a transformation right here. You can see the new blur values and then the delay and then the sound effect at the end. So yeah, if you thought this was cool or helpful, then feel free to like, subscribe if you want more videos like this. And yeah, thanks for watching, and I'll see you eventually. Also, I stream twitch.tv/ToggleAri if you want to check that out as well. But yeah, thanks. Bye.